You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
1122, Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Scott Hensler. We're going to continue with Montauk, filling in, ending this month. You know, we've got Thanksgiving here. And if you didn't get a chance to see a show I did a couple weeks ago, has to do with the American Indian, has to do with Freemasonry, I recommend that. You may do a little soul searching about Thanksgiving and the true meaning of what that really was about, not what the elite, the Illuminati, the New World Order, those who were in charge at the time and what they had done was horrific. And things have not changed. If you think the U.S. government is here to help, then you're in la-la land. Because what we have a tyrant group of people who wish to control the world, and Montauk was one of the aspects. Now, as I go through it this week, now last night was the introduction. Today is going to be about mind control. And as I bring in for Wednesday, we're going to talk about the Montauk Boys. It has to do with abduction, child trafficking, trauma-based mind control, those things. And tonight is mind control, but I'm going to be covering a little bit of both in that. And then I'll finish out on Friday, skipping over Thursday, tying in CERN. And the information that I have put together, I want to state that the information that is out there is really only by a select few. The United States government has denied any such event. Now, some of the dates, as I've talked about, are a little different. If you look at the manifest that's been put out by the U.S. naval groups, then it contradicts what others have said. So what I'm doing is I'm basing today's technology, today's issues of mind control, psychotronics, trauma, demonization, just everything that is part of the end times beast system does go back to Montauk, period. And some of the individuals that have been talked about over, the past year or so have been victims of that, and still were, through teleportation, and then also the perpetrators even showing up at their house, as well as them being brought back to Montauk. As I mentioned, Montauk, the top surface area where the park is, where the Camp Hero, the Air Force Base, all of that is the surface that has been abandoned. And the information by others is that the underground base is alive and well and hopping, with UFOs being seen coming in and out. And so we'll address that. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening, supporting. It's been an interesting journey the past couple of years. We're heading towards a time never seen before, at least in this generation. Pre-Adamic races, things that have happened before, nothing new under the sun, but in our generation or in our time frame as humans, this is new to us. So fasten your seatbelts, because you ain't seen anything yet. And so as we end out this year and go into 2017, there's information that the elite wants to have everything wrapped up by 2017. So with the so-called new president in, that has not been sworn in yet, I know your hopes are high. I know that everyone wants to see things turned around, and of course I do too. But again, being one that deals with the demonic, deals with evil, it's a little hard to be that positive, because again, the network that I'm going to be talking about tonight, maybe that'll shed some light on the fact that anyone that's in office is not going to be there unless they've been chosen by the elite. Okay. Now, before I continue any further, I know that a lot of the listeners are not what I would refer to as bondservants of Jesus Christ. Do not believe in Jesus. You're New Agers. You may think of Jesus being an ascended master. Many psychics, many people who practice witchcraft, occult practitioners listen to the show. And I'm going to be addressing some things tonight that show connecting with Jade Helm, connecting with what's called the Montauk chair, those things that are literally of artificial intelligence, where they were based from, where they came from. Again, as I mentioned, with Cerebral being portrayed in the X-Men, the ability through psychic abilities and electronics, otherwise mind amplifiers, as I talk about this, to be able to go to places and do things, whether it's astral projection, whether it's through electronic means, whatever the case is, we find, or at least my point is that to practice such things and to be involved with such things, you wonder why things are going terribly wrong in your life. It's why the elite wants to corner the market on that, so to speak, because with it, since the devil is not omnipresent, then through these means, this is how it is achieved. Okay, I want you to understand that. Now, some of you don't believe in evil. Some of you think it's within the hearts of man. But you need to remember that I'm an exorcist. I'm a deliverance minister. I deal with evil every day. I cast out demons. I basically slap them around, and I go have a cup of coffee. And then I come back and I slap a couple more around every day, day in, day out, going on 17 years now. Casting them out, binding them, sending them to the pit, setting people free, breaking curses. And so I've got a pretty good idea how this whole demonic realm works. If I didn't, I would have been slaughtered by now. And it is through the blood of Jesus Christ. So I want you to understand that the laws of God, as I go through this, pertain to my message tonight. And so please, again, just bear with me. That I'm not trying to pigeon, anyone into a corner. I'm not trying to cut anyone down. I'm simply stating the facts that how I address it day in and day out, because if I don't get to the root cause. I don't get to the root issue. The individual that I pray for, if I look the other way or don't consider such things, then they never get set free. And so by trying to sugarcoat by not addressing it in the manner that may offend you, then I'm doing you a great disservice. Because you see, myself back in the 90s was not necessarily an occult practitioner. I was searching and seeking. And through astral projection, through transcendental meditation, through occult practices, I opened up a door I wished I had not opened. And I'm going to point out that Montauk did the very same thing. They opened a door they wish they had not opened because they don't fully comprehend, at least the ones who were the technicians, the engineers, the project managers. They were working for the elite. Now the elite, the Illuminati, know exactly what's going on because they are the seed of Satan. All right? And they're using man as puppets, as worker bees to do the dirty work. And so in the ignorance of man, since the so-called Christian church has failed, and in reality, because of our pike, they were programmed to be the way they were, then the real true knowledge of exactly what's going on is not comprehended. And because if you did, you wouldn't do such things. Now, again, tonight's about mind control, but I want to review yesterday to make sure that there's some clarity. I just generalized some things. Again, it was an introduction, but I want you to understand 1, 2, 3 ABC. Now, as I mentioned, this all basically started in the 30s with the wanting to be able to cloak, to make invisible objects, ships, military people. This encompassed or bringing in Tesla, Einstein, von Neumann, basically turning into what's known as the Philadelphia experiment, done at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. Originally, it was referred to as Rainbow, also referred to as Red Hawk. This involved the USS Eldridge in 1943. And again, as I mentioned the dates, there's some controversy. There's even controversy on on how it all came about. But versus October 28th versus October 12th, 1943, I'm going to stick with October 12th. And as I mentioned, the gentlemen from yesterday, as I go through their names again, this is based on their testimonies. They were the ones who were on site. They were the ones who did this. And because of what we have today, then I'm going to follow that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't really care. My point is that we are dealing with the end result of whatever took place. Okay? So with the ship completely disappearing and then the reappearance, whether it was 24 or 48 hours later, whatever the deal was, this was an absolute disaster. There was death. Men were lost into the spirit, into the dimensions. They became insane. Men were found partially, dissolved into the ship's hull. The decking, the walls, whatever could go wrong, went wrong. And there was a warning about this, too. As I mentioned, Tesla bowed out and didn't want anything to do with the testing of humans. Now, on the physical, everything was fine. But as soon as you brought in human factors, human tissue, human spirit, human mind, that's a whole different thing, okay? Because remember God's laws, okay? You need to understand it. Now, supposedly the reptilians or the aliens, whatever you want to call them, they were warning Tesla. Now, I've always believed that Tesla got his information from the spirit. Now, when I talk about reptilians, when I'm talking about grays, I'm talking about physical beings. When I'm talking about demons, I'm talking about spirits. So I want to get into that a little deeper here. But it's interesting that the two deal with the dimensions, fourth and fifth, the second heaven, spirit realm, and whether they transport themselves through those dimensions or whether they are entrapped in there because they are disembodied spirits. The point of it is that these are things that operate outside of God's law, God's will, that these abominations that took place back in Enoch's time and even in Genesis 6 have established what we have today. All right? And again, the elite, the reptilian seed, the seed of Satan, that is the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergers, the Rockefellers, the 13 Illuminati, the 300 below them, and then the cascading, the diamond, the pyramid effect from there. and trickling into this country known as Freemasonry. And in Freemasonry, Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, with everything that's been established to bring in the beast system is in place. And this is one of the factors was Montauk, all right? Now, after this incident, there was a shutdown, okay? Congress, the House, the Senate, there was still individuals within those groups that did not want to, that were not part of this system, okay? So there was concern, there were those who spoke up, and then there was a withdrawal, okay? But we need to also understand that whenever you have technology, the ability to control and have power, there are always still those, you know, that are corrupt and will use whatever means. So it didn't really go away. It just went under the table for a while, and then they were ready to come back in a large scale. And again, that's where Montauk comes in. So from the Philadelphia Naval Yard, where this took place in 1943, we're going to come forward into the 60s, into the 70s, into the 80s with Montauk. Okay, so there's a large 40-year span from one incident to another. And as I address this, hopefully it'll make more sense. So there were several factors that took place. You know, whether it was October 28th, whether it was August 12th, whether this whole incident that took place in Philadelphia was alien-caused with an intervention, because there was one group that was with Hitler, with the Nazis, one group that was with us, other groups that did not want this to take place because they didn't want humans to have this technology. Whatever the circumstances was, again, I'm tying it with 1984, okay? So with 1984, with the incident that took place, whatever truly happened, this all leads to Montauk Island, the Air Force Base, as I mentioned before, the one that was abandoned in 1960, where the SAGE radar equipment and its buildings and structures were there, that there was a renewed interest in the cloaking and also the effects of electromagnetism on human minds because of the sailors that were affected. There was a curiosity from the CIA. You know, they came out of the OSS. You know, the war was over. You know, we know about MK Ultra now. We know about several other things. And so there was a renewed interest to come back and do this, and with the facility at Montauk already having high-powered equipment, already being remote, that it could be blocked off and people from the outside, you know, couldn't get in. It was already established as a military base. So it was the perfect environment for them to continue their dirty work, all right? So in secrecy, the CIA, the NSA, the Pentagon, black-funded projects, okay, with also funds coming from special interest groups, private groups, basically started in as the Phoenix Project, known as the Montauk Project. All right. Again, this basically, by the time they got things going, we're in the mid and late 70s. Okay, so now we've started into this, because when I talk about 84, I'm talking about when things went wrong. Okay, so in the interim, in the time, there's a lot of things that went on, a lot of horrible things that went on. Now, we need to also understand in the Phoenix Project that there were several of them. There was Phase 1 and Phase 2. Now, for Phase 1, we are talking about the cloaking. For Phase 2, basically coming in from 79 through 80, when things were being wrapped up, that it was in Phase 2 with mind control. Now, after everything went wrong and went haywire, they closed the base down in 85 on the surface, So it gave the appearance that this whole thing was abandoned and left, when in reality, there's still the underground facilities. Again, the connection with Philadelphia Project and its relation to August 12th, 1943, and the Phoenix Project, August 12th, 1983. So a 40-year issue there, all right, differences. Okay, now, with the incidences that took place in Philadelphia and the incidences that took place on Montauk, that in their experiments, being exactly 40 years apart on the same date, there was a phase locking in. There was a issue that had to do with the generation during 1943 and 1983 that in the interdimensions, in the basic also biorhythm of the Earth and the way that worked out, I'm not going to get into it too much, but what could take place was what they referred to as a standing wave. Okay, this vortex, this combined energy, both coming from Philadelphia and the Phoenix Project, locked each other together. So when things went haywire, they couldn't shut them down. That's why the Philadelphia disappeared. That's why it went missing for such a long time. They could not shut it down. It didn't matter what they did. And the same thing was taking place on Montauk, all right? So with this was a destruction that was taking place at Montauk and a destruction that was taking place on the Philadelphia. Okay, so this issue was then finally addressed. It was addressed with basically sweat, with courageous activities, with the ability to go back in time and have individuals get on the Philadelphia and shut it down, and then the individuals at Montauk to shut it down at the same time. So it was such a close call. That's one of the reasons that it was abandoned in '85, because they didn't want to deal with it anymore. And that was in that scale, okay? Now, we need to understand that we have technology today that doesn't need such power, because these were theories that came from Tesla with high power. Okay, since then, there's been the ability to understand this with low power and not to interject into the dimensions such a force that could be catastrophic, okay? So again, this was the Phoenix Phase 2, and what took place, let me address this, at the Montauk. Now, when they were doing the experiments, they were using the SAGE transmitter, the SAGE radar, which had gigawatts worth of power. It was a tremendous amount of power. They were using it for experimentation on humans, how radio waves affected, for mind control, weaponry, for time travel, for bringing things, for materializing objects. When one person could think about it, it would appear. And the basic individuals in this were psychics, all right? Now, when I talk about psychics, I want to go into a little more depth here, but as I mentioned this was done in what was called the Montauk chair. Okay, it was basically a chair that was put in an electromagnetic field with specialized receivers. The antenna array that was surrounding it was basically the design from Tesla. Those things in pyramid form. His transformers were also in pyramid form. They don't necessarily do that today. If they do, I've never seen it. But when it comes to the Tesla coil and everything else, that was basically the format. So with this Montauk chair, the ability to read a person's mind, and in reality what was taking place, that the SAGE transmitter was turned into what was referred to as a mind amplifier. So whatever the psychic was imaging, whatever he was thinking of, whatever he was visualizing on, whatever he was trying to do, then they could literally cause it to happen. So whether he wanted to go read minds, whether he wanted to control people, whether he wanted to do space travel, those things that would have to do with dimensions, then he could do it, and he could use it to cause other people to do it. All right. Now that was a very complex system. It took people who really had the theory, really who had the know-how. It took a lot of money. I understand there was billions of dollars worth of projects that had to do with gold that came from Germany and all this other stuff, plus private funding. I talked about that. But in either case, it was wasn't without the effect of people. So there were many people who were killed, many people who were damaged, that went insane, that became sick, that they had to destroy. Basically, the whole thing was a very evil situation. Okay. Now, with that took place, again, this at the one particular time in August 12th, 1983, that this was in parallel with 1943 of the Eldridge. Okay, that things went out of control. All right. And as that took place, there was a realization with those who were there at Montauk that this was beyond them. Now I need to also, inform you too that there was also aliens that basically came from alien technology. The chair, I understand, the prototype came from alien technology, and that there was personnel there that were aliens. And when I say aliens, I'm talking about reptilians, okay, even grays that would be the workers. Okay? Now, you need to also understand, as I mentioned, that these are the accounts of Preston Nicholson, that, and Duncan Cameron, Basic Albeit. These are brothers that were there, that supposedly also the ones that went back in time to the Eldridge and shut it down. But also understand that Duncan himself was a psychic. Now, as I get into it here about psychic, this is where I want to make sure that I don't want to offend anybody, but I need you to understand the nature of what that's really all about. So by using a person of such, abilities with the pineal gland, the ability to go into the spirit, and then to transmit that out into the world, basically, the power behind that is absolutely frightening. And again, it got away from them. And when it did, at that particular time, the man who was in the chair was asked to think about a creature, a monster. And lo and behold, that was exactly what took place. See these hidden darkness within our minds. Now, you need to remember, as I go through this, that we're also talking about the demonic. And CERN being a method of piggybacking demons out of the spirit realm into the physical, this was an opportunity for a big, ugly, hairy, stinky thing to come into the physical, and that's exactly what took place at the same time 40 years later in the Aldrich. Okay, so this was a massive boo-boo, all right? Now, Jack Pruitt, the manager, was the one who, in Montauk, managed to shut the system down, okay, and Duncan and his brother Al were the ones who supposedly went back and shut down the Eldridge. Now, again, I can't, other than the testimonies and the information that I found, whether it really happened or not, I can't prove it to you. I'm just simply telling you that based on what we know today and where they've advanced to, that this all makes sense. Okay, it does seem to tie to it. It is tethered. There is reason to believe it. Okay? All right? And again, remember that the Eldridge, when it did disappear, that it literally was gone for 24, 48 hours. So literally the things that were taking place on Montauk were a couple-day events. And this particular creature that manifested was destroying property, buildings, was able to consume. There were people whose lives were lost by this creature. Again, the testimony from these men were such as that. And again, because of this horrible thing that took place, this is why they shut down. And so, again, understanding that the Montauk chair in the hands of an individual who's capable of astral projecting, capable of having psychic powers, that the unleashing of the spirit realm is literally there, okay? So again, addressing this with mind control, between the Phoenix 1 with cloaking, Phoenix 2 with again, mind control, leading to the Montauk boys was basically another asset. And I'm going to be, tying that together. Okay, I hope I'm making sense here, because there's an awful lot of information that I have to skip over because of time. So I'm just trying to bring it all together, and then of course I'll bring this together with Friday with CERN, again with what they're doing now and going into the spirit realm just like they did with the Montauk. So they can talk about interdimensional, they can talk about dimensions, the third and fourth, the parallels, all of this stuff, paradox, whatever. It's still the spirit realm. Okay, you need to understand that. And in that spirit realm is very evil things. Okay, so again, if you want to call it second heaven, fourth and fifth, that's fine. But in there are demons, fallen angels in these dimensions. This dimension locked in basically with terrestrials, all right? So here we are on the planet, on Earth, whether it's flat, round, whatever you want to look at it. We are physical, we are human. We are molecular, we are of atoms. We are capable of being broke down, we're capable of being rearranged. We occupy space, okay? We are a living being that consumes and so forth. And we need to understand that extraterrestrials, we're referring to something from another planet or out from in another, distant whatever, they would love to come here. Okay, but I believe that the Orion belt, I believe the radiation belt that's out there is keeping that from happening. I believe that those things that have been put in place because of the moonwalk, those things that have to do with Mars, I believe these are part of the counterfeit, these are part of the lies. And so in order for us to support such things, thinking that we're going to be going to other planets, we're willing to allow Congress to fund these projects. Okay? Now, my concern is the interdimensional aspect of it, being able to go from one point to another, from one place to another, astral projection, only through electronic means of electromagnetics of the influences, basically writing time and space, using power, using mind and will, being able to move things of hybrids and physical, reptilians, grays, clones, again. I'm not going to separate demons and fallen angels, other than that demons and fallen angels, or demons themselves, are spirits. Reptilian, grays, and clones are physical. But since they are a physical body, and spirits are disembodied, that when a person is infected with demons and I cast them out, the demons have a legal right to be there because of things that have taken place, such as sin and generational curses, that they inhabit, they act out their ugly nature. So I can assure you that reptilians and grays and clones, no good is found in them. Do you understand that? Okay, now the fallen angels, being of the nature that of it, once angelic, they are capable of being spirit to manifest into the physical, okay, such as Satan, all right, Lucifer, okay. Now, with reptilians, being of reptilian or the demon seed of Satan, being half angelic, having some of that trait, they themselves can be interdimensional, okay, or at least have mind power or control, much like a psychic, that is able to do things such as astral projection, by either ways of, again, by teaching man through electronic means to have these ability, that they too can do things and move around where they could not before. So they needed men to make these things. They needed men to create them. They needed the minerals from the earth. They needed to be able to assemble them, and that's where man comes in. Okay, so man's been a willing participant and putting, in place the domino effect, the chess pieces for evil to prevail. All right, do you understand it? That's the way it's been from day one. So here's where I need you to understand, as an exorcist, that the right, what is right and wrong, what gives demons legal right to infest you, to curse you, to kill you, to torment you, is the practice of divination, okay? The act of power without the God or his approval. Divination. Okay, so you're basically using the demonic, you're using the spirit realm instead of using the Holy Spirit, instead of using those things that Christ has given us by his sacrifice. Now, under that, I put the classifications of witchcraft, okay, which is the act of control through the spirit realm for one's gain, controlling of people, okay, and whatever you want, you're going to use mind control, you're going to use demons, you're going to be a sorcerer to do whatever you want to do. That in itself is evil because you're inflicting your will onto other people. Whether you're using psychology to control people, which is as if it was the operation of witchcraft, because what you're doing is you're causing people to do and be something they didn't want to be. Hence, again, we have the MK Ultra mind controls. So this is all witchcraft. Again, falling under divination, the practice of such things without God. Okay? Again, sorcery is like witchcraft, but that can encompass drugs or other items. We've seen voodoo. Basically, it falls all under the same thing. And, of course, being of using drugs, then we introduce pharmakia. Again, those who practice such things in the Old Testament were put to death, and the reason is that once you open the spirit realm, once you open the door, just like they did at Montauk, then something very big, hairy, stinky comes out, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Hence the word genie, okay, coming from Islam, jinn meaning demon, all right? So when you let the genie out of the bottle, and by the way, the Manhattan Project, that was some of the stuff that was referred to as letting the genie out of the bottle. As a kid growing up, that's the way it was referred to. So again, what does this all have to do with Montauk? Well, again, in the use of psychics, astral, telekinesis, and in itself is divination. So the people sitting in the Montauk chair, the ones who were psychic, were using divination, witchcraft, and sorcery. Okay? Again, these are abominations before God. Okay? Now, with this, no good's going to be found in it because it eventually leads to having power that no man should have, and with it is control over other individuals that brings harm. So witchcraft in itself I categorize as mind control, because when I pray for someone, I pray for the witchcraft spirits to come off of their brain, off of their mind, for the hindering, blocking spirits, for the witchcraft, spoken curses, word curses that come from it, so their mind is no longer under bondage. Okay? So witchcraft allows demons and fallen angels to use control, to operate, to infest the user and the operator. Okay? Even the victims of this become demonized. Okay? Because in itself can be a trauma, can be an infliction that is basically cast onto somebody. And if you're not operating in the blood of Christ, if you're not where you should be, then you can be highly affected by this. This is one of the reasons to put on the full armor of God. This is one of the reasons to be in that situation. Now, again, those in the occult, please bear with me. I know this sounds weird to you. You don't agree with it, but I'm telling you right now that the deliverances that I do, that if someone comes in who was in the occult and practiced witchcraft, that it is a much harder fight because you willfully allowed those spirits in. You didn't just get infected because of trauma, because of a mistake you did in sin. You called for them to come in. All right? So this whole practice at Montauk was that. Now, we also need to understand that all these projects from the Illuminati is Luciferian in nature. And in their purpose is for control of the populations, for destruction, for selection, for slavery. So Montauk, MK Ultra, Monarch, Psychotronics are of divination, witchcraft, and sorcery, period. The bottom line. So when I, and by the way, if some of you happen to be a Montauk boy, or somebody, it was mostly boys, okay? I'm sure there's some women out there too, but if you've been in that, please contact me, because the way that I will approach this, that the demons that are behind, the ones that are giving you, that are manifesting, irritating you, coming to you physically, doing physical things to you, causing you sickness, causing you mental illness, this is exactly how I will address it. I will go after divination. I will go after sorcery. I will go after witchcraft. I will go after pharmakia. Okay? And then there's the other aspect is the healing of your spirit because of the trauma that was done to you. Okay? So no good ever comes of it. Okay? Because once you need to remember, you give a demon an inch, it'll take a mile. You let him in the door, then the door will always stay open. So please, anyone who practices such things, there is an accountability that in time, that when you've sold your soul to the devil, he will come a knocking to be paid, okay? So power and control by those who wish to control and destroy man are basically the ones behind this, okay? So using man, using governments, companies, corporations, to also note that the operations are overseen by the reptilians. No matter what's being done, as handlers, there will always be reptilians or grays there. Okay, now you can have what's referred to as watchers. You can have fallen angels that are there, but in the physical, this is basically what's going on. Okay, so which, by the way, works. They all worked right alongside there at Montauk. Okay, so all the individuals that I talked about before had offices with reptilians or grays. Many of the facilities were facilitated for either a very large person or a very small person. And again, this has been, information brought out all through different underground facilities, okay? So if these hybrids can do this, why would they need us? Well, they need us, again, for the very fact that us as humans, who are to be one, or to be in the nature and relationship with God, that when we're separated from God, when we sin, then we're giving the demons, we're giving them the legal right to come out of the spirit realm, to come out of the dimensions, to basically do those things that they would not normally do. So they come out of bondage. They now have freedom. They now can move about. They now can be in you and have you to do whatever their nature is. Okay? And again, this whole thing is to bring them out of the legal bond from the spirit realm to be in the physical, so they can act out their ugly nature. And the ugly nature is eventually to destroy man. So they need man to sin against God, thus allowing, through demonic access, the corporate opportunity and freedom to both, move about physically and dimensionally. Okay? So again, when we talk about greys and reptilians, though they themselves are not demons, they may have demons on them. I talked about how the wolf spider himself, the female, can have the babies on the back, and that's how I see it. It's bad enough to look at a wolf spider. They're pretty disgusting, but when you see several hundred or 1,000 babies on its back, that's the way I see greys. That's the way I see reptilians. That's why I see people who are demon-possessed. They are literally loaded with demons as if it were babies on their back. So, again, here's another thing. Now, I'm probably going to go a little bit longer here. If the demons are in the spirit realm, and the reptilians, the ones that cannot astral project, the ones that are basically, maybe too far from the bloodline to have full access, the ones who do, are able to time travel, the ones who are able to dimensionally come in and out through portholes, through stargates, whatever the situation is, you'll notice that there's never any recognition. You'll notice that there's never any talk that once they're in the spirit realm, how come they're not bumping elbows with demons? How come the demons aren't jumping on them? How come they're not at war with the demons? Do you understand it? So if they're in the spirit realm and they're capable of going from one place to another, dimensionally, where the demons are, fourth and fifth, then why are they not in war with them? Okay, do you understand? So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay, the chip off the old block. They're all tied together, ladies and gentlemen. So don't for a moment think that a reptilian, a gray, has your best interest in mind. Okay, and so this lie, this facade of supposedly the beings that created us, that started life, who are going to come back and make everything right, don't even begin to buy into it. Okay, do you understand that? If I could tell you anything, please do not fall for that lie. Evil does what evil is, and evil's coming and will do what it is, and that is to destroy, to enslave, to do those things that there will have to be a divine intervention from God. And thank goodness for that. All right? All right, so the whole thing, again, when we're talking about dimensions, it's the spirit realm, period. All right? So this interaction between the two, again, there's no honor amongst thieves. So there you go. All right. Now, back to the Montauk chair, okay? I want you to notice that it isn't a normal person. Now, they probably have put normal people in there. And when I say normal, I'm talking about someone who doesn't have the psychic abilities. And as I address the psychic abilities, there's, some things here that need to be addressed, that need to be understood, that with that, there's several things that, again, are violations. And so when you have a person who's in the chair and their psychic abilities, meaning that their pineal gland or their third eye, which, by the way, in Freemasonry is one of the things when someone comes to me, I close it. And I say, well, gee, you shouldn't be doing that, Scott. No, on the contrary, we are of a fallen nature. Now, when we were in the Garden of Eden, whatever the situation was there, we had these abilities. And then once we were cast out, trying to avoid, the things of knowledge, to keep us from falling into the hands of wrong, these things were intended to be closed. And in the interim, evil has come to reopen them again. So people, if you're a psychic and you come into my office, I'm sorry, you're loaded with demons. I'm going to have to get the bucket, and you're going to throw up for about 30 minutes. You're going to heave, you're going to do all kinds of horrible noises, you're going to make gurgle noises, you're going to yell, you're going to scream, the demons are going to come out, you might even take a swing at me. Whatever the situation is, you have opened the door, and you have babies on your back. Now, that means clairvoyance, that means necromancy, that means being able to connect with the spirit realm, okay? The transmission, meaning that the spirits that are in your brain now communicate to the spirits in the spirit realm, okay, just like radio transceivers. And so you think you're psychic, you think you have the ability, that in reality that once they got you to sin, then they had you. And so now they could take you out of your body, and you think you're astral projecting on your own will. But what they're doing is they're giving you an inch, they're giving you a little bit of rope to hang yourself. That every time you go in and you come back, you've been piggybacking demons, fallen angels, and other creatures now that are coming from CERN, okay? So through your willful sin, through your willful acts, you are setting the system for the end times. You are allowing creatures to come to this physical that were never intended to be here. And again, it's going to have to be the divine intervention of God in order to put them back, to put that genie back in the bottle, okay? So as a psychic sits in the chair, it's basically a electromagnetic field, receptors, a pyramid-shaped like antenna, okay, which is a pickup, becomes a mind transmitter, taking energy, going psychic to a psychic signature with special receivers. Now, these special receivers then immediately go into are then the deciphering of the human mind, okay? Hexadecimal, binary, the amplitude, we have analog, we have digital. So the supercomputer Cray computers at the time, Cray 1, Cray 2, and then the IBM 360, 370s were all employed with these receivers, because you got to remember the technology of the time. Now, with this, then they would be immediately on its output put into the SAGE transmitter, the transceiver that was what was the radar, to give that magnitude, to give that amplification as a mind amplifier into the physical, and with its highly induced magnetic field resonating, frequency shift keying, phase shifting, whatever their technique was with the psychic in the interaction, then could cause things to alter. There could be time changes, there could be time travel, there could be mass mind control, there could be the formation of objects. By simply thinking it, something would materialize. That's where that creature came from that I was talking about before. Okay, that was the basis of the Phoenix second run on Montauk. Okay, so all these computers. Now, in this, as they were doing everything, they were recording everything. So as they gave the commands, they told the psychic what they wanted in their experiments, because there's a lot of scientists doing this, tweaking this, finding out what worked, what didn't work. Got to remember, this was over quite a few years. So they had their failures, they had their success. People died. People were lost in the spirit realm. Things came in that shouldn't have been there. Things were, sent out and never seen again. People went into other times, okay, this whole thing. And so with the SAGE radar and its immense power, this mind transmission was at a psychic level never seen before. And you got to remember, this was all under the direction of the reptilians. When I say reptilian, I'm simply classifying the other species. There's several species out there. I won't get into that right now. We've done that before in the past. Okay, now able to alter, to change, to bend time, space, to materialize and mind control others at high power. Now, at first it was all high power, but I need to tell you now that when that was all shut down in '85, they came to the understanding with such power also came the ability to fail catastrophically. And so with the advancements of cell towers, of satellites, and the technology that never did stop, they now have implemented that into that network. Okay, you need to understand that it never did stop. They just simply came to the understanding that the way they were doing it was being careless. All right? All right, so you can imagine the intense interest of the military to use such an item to do remote viewing, to materialize an enemy into the camp, to cause a whole army to disappear, to take an army and to make them reappear. Now, there was talk a year ago how one group, was sent from one place to another. Snopes, if you're still using Snopes as your go-to for truth, you need to understand that Snopes was created by a man and a woman, husband and wife, who were CIA operatives that started that website. So if you're going to Snopes, there'll always be some truth, but you need to understand that they are disinformation specialists. They are there to curve, to alter, to change your thinking, to make you think that when you did hear something was of truth and you go there and they say it's a lie, you buy into the lie. I don't use them. I don't want anything to do with them, okay? The Illuminati, the New World Order, now has the ability through this technology to complete Agenda 21, Jade Helm, to get people on mass mind control now, to come into the FEMA camps, to make a whole town go away. Now, as I get into tomorrow and we talk about the Montauk boys, and I need to let you know that I'm going to be hitting it hard. I'm not going to pull punches. I'm going to let you know what really went on, what's going on now. We know about human trafficking, sex slavery. We know, about the Clintons and their involvement, the emails with Weiner, all that stuff goes all the way back to Montauk. And it has not stopped. It has continued and has gone to a level that, as I mentioned, I believe it was 1999, that around 800,000 children, meaning, when I say children, I'm talking about teenagers, 16 and down, were missing in 1 year alone. Do you understand the amount of children, the amount of kids that have gone to these underground bases, that have gone to these organizations, that all, by the way, that with this Montauk chair, you can the Pied Piper, you can literally cause children, just as the mind control of media, then to want to have them, like an iniquitous pull, to pull them into the desire to leave home, to be rebellious to their parents, to run away. Witchcraft is very strong in that, by the way. I've known cases where people wanted someone else's spouse, and through covenant, through witchcraft, through those things, they got the spouse to leave the marriage and come to them. So if you've lost a spouse, and many of you may know about that winch, that Jezebel, that you know what, or that guy, that smooth talker, believe me, that's all witchcraft as well, okay? So with time travel, again, remote viewing. With remote viewing, you could literally see into what people are thinking. You'll know ahead of time what they're going to do. This is an absolute mind control that only the devil himself is willing to use. And so the individuals that are controlling and operating Jade Helm, which is one of the aspects of this, being one to use artificial intelligence. Now, remember I mentioned a little bit ago that while the psychic was in the chair, the Montauk chair, that they were recording everything, right? Because, computers, you can digital, record them, tapes. At the time, tapes were used. That then they didn't need the psychic. Once they got them to do what they wanted in the spirit, in the psychic realm, telekinesis, whatever the deal was, then they had that digitally recorded. They could come back and dissect that and now feed it into artificial intelligence. So in reality, what they've been doing is they've been training artificial intelligence psychic powers. Again, Satan is not omnipresent, but now with this type of a technology, that is a fact. That is part of this beast system. This, again, is the genie out of the bottle. So Jade Helm, being a mass opportunity to be in the physical, to test the spirit with troops, the psychological effect being of mind control, to see how humans would react on such things. Now, that could be with force, without force, or less than, meaning somewhere in the middle of it. Okay? What an incredible time we live in. Okay? All right. Now, while all this is going on, we need to understand that there is also other countries doing this as well. Okay, whether they're in agreement, whether they're in opposition, they are doing it too, along with playing the game with the reptilians, with the Greys, with the fallen angels. All right, so we need to understand that, let's say that even though we quench and we stop the U.S. government from doing such a thing, we still have the Chinese, we still have the Russians, we still have rogue nations, we still have Israel, because which Israel in itself is under the auspices of the Illuminati, under the Freemasons, under the Rothschilds. And with their advancements in technology, you need to remember that one of the most advanced intel plants is in Israel. So they have technology there that is only paralleled or exceeded by Silicon Valley. Okay, so we need to understand that this ability, this technology is in the hands of other crazies, of other psychopaths. All right. Again, CERN is a interagency joint effort with other countries, and there are several CERNs. We hear about the one over, the very large one, the Hadron Collider. There's several of them all over the place. And again, I mentioned with that in itself that in it too, with the magnetic field, with the magnetic fluxes that can be generated, that in itself could do very much the same thing that took place at Montauk, but to another fine level, to a level that is absolutely pinpointing, like a GPS guided missile. It's going to hit its mark. Okay? So with all this together, we need to also understand the implementation of MK Ultra, Monarch, trauma-based mind control that was taking place there at Montauk. Now, in that combination of being the two coming together was horrific. This is one of the reasons that so many children were lost there. Okay? But there was also success. Now, with that technology and the ability to program to have the artificial intelligence now know the human psychic, to now know the human mind, to be able to go to another level, this gave them the ability to basically take large influxes of children, of people, to program them at an alarming rate, kind of a high production rate. Okay, it isn't ones and twosies like it was before, where it took weeks and took months and maybe a whole year would go by. Now they were able to do something within a very short period of time and have complete success, have complete mind control, to have complete abilities to take someone, send them out to be an assassin, send them out to be a president, send them out to be a corporate CEO, to be in Congress, to be, in the FEMA, of Department of Homeland Security, to be in the Pentagon, to be whatever the situation is in a very short period of time because of what they did over the years. Their recording, their documentation, and feeding everything into an artificial intelligence with something like the Montauk chair. Because you got to remember that any time that you have electromagnetics of a transceiver, you can transmit out and you can transmit back in, a transceiver. Just like an IP address on the internet, things go out, things come back. So again, when they would put someone in a chair very much like that, they could literally download. They also do essence, your very essence of who you are. You got to remember too that since we are human, we are physical. We have an atomic number, basically, meaning that our molecules, we have flesh, we have blood, we have, we're held together. That in its breakdown, that you can then measure a soul. You can measure the basic intelligence. You can measure those things of the mind, and so an essence of an individual can be taken and stored and then placed into somebody else. And since it's in a digital format, let's say, then you literally could take 1,000 people from one person and make a hive mentality. Okay, the Ricken techniques, or the Ricken program, these trauma-based technologies, again, were all basically alien learned. And when I say alien, I'm talking about fallen angel. So they're able to do things that just basically we have such a hard comprehension of being able to do that. Okay? So again, that's going to lead us into the Montauk boys tomorrow on the mind control and what they've done to them. There's many kids out there. We're talking about thousands, ladies and gentlemen. Tens of thousands. And that number also, by the way, in total has reached 1 million. Now, there's my understanding, I think there were 23 total bases that while Montauk was at its peak, and then they got it down to just maybe 3 or 4, something like that. So that's why the high number, because you had all these bases and you had this high throughput of kids that they would take off the streets, and many wouldn't make it, many would break, many would run away, many would, kill themselves. And so there was just this high amount of disaster, all right? And, again, as I address this tomorrow, I'm going to be bringing in the fact of human trafficking, sex slavery, rituals, basically sacrificing, causing them to death, that also in the spirit realm because of what they're doing. Now, let's say that they have something like a Montauk chair, only it's an altar, and they place an individual onto the altar and they terrorize and they bloodlet them and they sodomize them and they do all these horrible things. Just think of the recording of the terror that they have, and now they could rebroadcast that with the mind transmitter, that terror into millions of people at one time. Now, those people who thought that Barry Goldwater was not a good guy, Barry Goldwater was a good guy. Barry Goldwater tried to shut all this down. He tried to expose it, and even his family and those who were involved continued with that. All right, if he had succeeded, we wouldn't have this today. We know that Kennedy was assassinated. We know the presidents, when Johnson came along, Johnson also helped fund this. Okay, the presidents all through this have helped fund that. And so we literally have what we have today with this network called PSYCHOTRONICS. And with PSYCHOTRONICS and the cell phone network that is established out there, never forget that the devil is in the details. That fallen angels, this is fallen angel technology. Demons were the worker bees, using grays and reptilians then in the physical. And all this moves us toward the world dominance by the elite, who are from the seed of Satan, period. All right, so mind control is in many aspects, including witchcraft. So I will call this a synthesized witchcraft, a synthetic witchcraft, a witchcraft through electronic means. That's exactly what's going on. Okay? All right, again, I hope that makes sense to you. I went through an awful lot of information. But I just, again, when we understand what's going on, then in our own hearts we can take a step back and say, no, we will not be a part of this. Because you need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, it is your children that they are after. See, if you're of a certain age, you're expendable. They're going to throw you away. They're going to eliminate you. You're too old. Even though they could mind control you, they'd rather have a 20-year-old. They'd rather have an 18-year-old. They'd rather have whatever that they can manipulate and control that has the ability to physically do what they want, which can mean just about anything. You know, with the lid being blown off of this sex slave, with the sex trade, with the Clintons, with Weiner, with all the others, that island, you know, we've talked about this, with masses of children being brought in from Mexico, with the Queen of England that took the kids that were out of there, you know, up north and Canada. See, this all ties together. Montauk was another one, because I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that whenever they brought a child in, we'll refer to it as a specimen of a required nature for the lust of these elite, that these children then were groomed and then sent to them. Okay, and there was also those that went for certain blonde and blue-eyed males that were in high request. So this is very sick. Pedophilia is off the charts. All of this has to do with this. Whenever you have evil, remember I mentioned that the root of this basically is of the demonic, that perversion is right there. Perversion, sodomizing, raping, molesting, abuse, sacrifices, drinking blood, all of this stuff is of these individuals. Everybody that had something to do with this in some form or another, whether they were directly involved with it, the demonic stronghold, the curses that come from it, the retribution of God will literally be upon the heads of those who do not repent. And so this is why I bring this up to those who may not necessarily agree about Jesus Christ. But you need to understand that to give your life, you will save it in the service of God through Jesus. No one comes to the Father except through Christ. And I need you to understand that regardless of some of the theologies or some of the things that are being brought out there, that over the years that I have done deliverance, that until you repent, until you renounce, and until you confess and ask for forgiveness, that big, hairy, stinky demon is not coming out of you. That curse is not being broke off of you. It is literally the order of God for us to come to the understanding of our wrongs and ask for forgiveness. And in our forgiveness, the blood of Christ is able to set us free. And that is the great commission of Jesus Christ. So if you are in the occult, if you are a witch, please give me a call. Let me pray for you. Let me bring you out of this. Because when the hammer finally drops and they release this genie out of the bottle in full, that all the cell towers then are turned on to a complete mind control, those who are in Christ, I believe that the covering with the helmet of salvation is going to be there like a Faraday cage, and you will not be affected. Because if I did not have that covering, I could not do what I do. So it is my understanding, my devotion, and my love to you, because I wish, whenever I see someone suffering, whenever I see children who are being abused, a righteous indignation rises in me, and in that I fight for you. And so those who support me, again, thank you, because there are so many people who are set free. The phone calls I get for those, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, knew me 5 years ago, their lives have changed. This is what we're called to do. And now they're ready for the fight. They're ready for the fight. So there you go. All right. You know, again, what can I say? This is a time that we've never seen before. Now, it may have been in another, pre-Adamic. It may have been, 10,000 years ago. I don't know. All I know is we're dealing with it now. And so we need to deal with it in the order that it is called to be. So there you go. All right. God bless everyone. Tomorrow, Montauk Boards.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.